Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're starting a brand new campaign in Total War 3 Kingdoms, as we're going to be playing Cao Cao in the 190 start, which is the base game start, and we'll be attempting a historical campaign with Cao Cao, where we will follow Cao Cao's footstep throughout his life. There are some rules that will be outlined. I will put a pinned comment down below for the full timeline that we'll be attempting to follow, and some of the plans we have to counteract the AI actions that will happen in the 190 start. There's a few things that's going to be a little bit impossible. Essentially, we're not going to get Lu Bu's betrayal in 194, which is sort of what we see with the A World Betrayed DLC start. We're going to be trying to manufacture that or finding some proxy enemies to fight. But for the most part, we're going to be following the footstep of Cao Cao's life, recruiting generals who are relevant to Cao Cao's faction, and sort of set ourselves up for a few achievements along the way as well. There's two achievements in particular we're striving for. One is called the Son of the Tortoise, which requires that one of Cao Cao's sons take over and become the emperor. So in this case, we're going to set up Cao Pi. This is a nod to the fact that Cao Cao never declared himself as the emperor in his lifetime, even though he could have done so given his power. He eventually waited for his son to take over after his death, and basically posthumously was named emperor after his son usurped the crown from the Han dynasty. So we'll do something very similar. We can hold off from reaching the king rank even if we have enough prestige points until Cao Cao dies of natural causes. After 220, we'll put Cao Cao by himself in Luoyang, which is the city where he dies. He dies then at age 66. He might live longer or shorter in-game. And if he lives shorter, tough luck. We get to do Son of Tortoise a little bit earlier. If he lives a bit longer, we'll have him sitting idle in Luoyang, waiting for his death, so that we can kind of match his historical life and his place of death. And after he dies, we'll turn this campaign on turbo and basically speed run through the last two kingdoms that will spawn the map the moment that we declare ourselves as the emperor. We'll usurp the emperor. We'll try to secure the emperor by around 195, which is sort of the historical date. We'll list out all the date and time we're trying to follow. There's going to be certain things the AI is going to do which makes it impossible for us to follow things historically. We can't control Liu Bei's whereabouts. We can't control Liu Bao's death date. Hopefully, the most ideal play is that Liu Bei's events trigger and take over for Cao Qian after Cao Qian's death, so that we can fight Liu Bei over here, and we can use him as a proxy for Lu Bu's rebellion, because Lu Bu eventually joins Liu Bei during that period. And then hopefully around 207, right before historically true beat, Liu Bao dies of old age, and Liu Bei has less than 10 territories. He'll pop on over and take control of Liu Bao's holdings. We can fight him as the proxy all the way till we get to Chibi. Then we'll just stop advancing against the Sun clan, who hopefully will take over the south. We'll chase them away from whatever land they have in the north. And then for historical defeats, we'll basically sell the land that we are holding onto to the faction who's supposed to win. Because the other achievement I'm going for is called When the Sun Rises from the West, and essentially we cannot lose a single battle, even delegate ones. So we have to keep our territory protected at all times. We can't get caught off guard, having an undefended county get attacked and lose a battle. We can't even use the looping tactic to fight for a draw, because a draw is not a win. So we'll have to try to win every single battle for that achievement. And then there's other things like how the factions are positioned on the map that's not going to be historically accurate, that we have to just deal with. For example, our first task is that somewhere in 191, Cao Cao historically takes control of the Dong Commandery here. He takes control of it from Black Mountain bandits and Southern Xiongnu tribes, who takes control of this area when the coalition was pushed up against Dongzhuo, leaving this area undefended. In-game, we have Huang Shao, who's supposed to be down here in Runan and Inchuan, so we'll have to fight him instead. That's fine. For the most part, we're dealing with rebel factions. It's going to be accurate. There's other cases where factions like Zhang Xiu, who is going to be a vassal of Liu Biao, and someone who's on the map in the 194 start, He's just not there in the game. We can't really create him, so we'll just attack the area that he's holding and basically declare war against Liu Biao and basically deal with that. When we take Hanzhong, for example, Zhang Lu's supposed to surrender to us. When we take the north, Zhang Yan's supposed to surrender to us. We might try to make Zhang Yan, say, a vassal, but given that we're different subcultures, I can't really absorb him. So we'll have to figure out ways to deal with that. And factions like Gaogan, they're just not on the map. So we can't really recreate everything 100% accurate, but we'll be faithful to Cao Cao's life. So with that said, we're just going to hop into the campaign and describe the faction mechanics as we deal with them. Cao Cao is a very powerful faction. In the very last DLC, Fates Divided, he got a nice newly added roster of units that are super strong. He has great mechanics in that last patch, or at least the major patch 1.7. He had a revamp faction mechanic where he gets schemes. Definitely one of the more complex factions in the game, even though the starting situation is easy, and I do believe his faction has the highest ceiling once you know how everything works in the game, but it's quite difficult for a new player to get everything under wraps, which is what we will do. We'll describe everything as we play, and hopefully if you're new to the game, you will learn a ton as you watch along. We'll be playing on legendary difficulty. We're just going to do the 40-minute battle timer just to keep things a little short. I tend to take too long in siege battles. This kind of keeps me honest and not just slowly siege someone out. And we'll be starting with the pretty small set of characters. There are definitely other noteworthy characters that should be with us early on. People like Cao Hong, who saves Cao Cao's life, but they're not really added in the game. I know there are mods like TUP, which is the total unique puzzle mod that adds character like Cao Hong to the game, but it honestly adds way too many characters and too many items that are slightly too broken. And they also add characters who are not historically correct. For example, if we run the TUP mod for this playthrough, we'll get characters like Xiahou Dun's grandson, who's the wrong age, and also a Lady Xiahou, who's the wrong age in our beginning roster, which is just way too much. So just a MTU mod for this run, and let's get things started. China must be united.
"洛阳烟火彤彤，今已化为丘墟。如此大祸，皆因董卓权势熏天。此贼劫迁天子，可谓暴虐之极，又不失为一条毒计。董贼掌控朝廷，便可掌控天下。
孤乃当今治世之能臣，乱世之奸雄也。
讨董联军主公以为如何？他们
君合力不齐，此蒙羞矣。不过，众人倒可借此彰显昔日威风。如此看来，争天下为王者，舍孤其谁？羸缩之期，不但在天，养怡之福，可得永年。
Alrighty, there's our faction flyby intro, and we are supposed to establish our power. Lord Cao Cao, you've been casted out. Branded an enemy of the Empire, it's clear that only you have the capabilities to end Dong Zhuo's tyranny and bring peace. You can use the surging population and pliable peasantry of your homeland to your advantage. Most vulnerable foes to the north may make expansion there beneficial. The time has come to increase your prestige and influence, then unite what has been divided. So be wary of Yuan Shu to the west and Tao Xian to the east. Will be fighting both at the same time for vast majority of the early game and claim the neighboring Han Empire regions. So these are things the game recommends you do. It's a sandbox game. We obviously are going to apply a lot of house rules with our follow the history track. We are going to engage in battle against Yuan Huan, who is a very good generic general in the game. He has a very good background bonus that can actually sort of alter how you play Cao Cao, because Cao Cao builds a lot of green buildings, which are agricultural buildings, and Yuan Huan here has a bonus to speed up those constructions as assignment. He's very useful. If you can capture him on turn 1, it will help your campaign out a ton. But it's not guaranteed, and he dies after this battle. So you get one shot at this. Sometime it's actually worth reloading the game to get another start where you can capture him. But for our sake, since he doesn't historically work for Cao Cao at this time, if he dies, he dies. We do get a Taste of Victory bonus after we beat him. Doesn't really help us by much. The 5 points morale is nice. The military supply is good if we're going to march in enemy territory. Only going to last us 3 turns. We might actually be marching through some neutral territory to get to Dong, which we don't border early on. So we'll probably take advantage of this. And just to take a look at where we start. We just have Chen's capital. This is sort of the area where Cao Cao is from. He goes home early on from the capital after Dongzhuo takes control, and he essentially asks his dad, Cao Song, for money. Now, Cao Song is very rich, not because he's a businessman, but because he was a government official with very high connections. His adopted father was a eunuch, and this eunuch was very well connected at court. Therefore, Cao Song ended up in a very comfy position. Now, eunuchs are castrated servants of the emperor, and because they're castrated, they can't have kids, so many of them like to adopt, and oftentimes they adopt from within their own family. So if they have brothers, which in this case, I believe Cao Song is a nephew of Cao Teng, who is the grandfather, he gets adopted, and he becomes his son to continue his line, essentially. And this is why Cao Cao is made fun of for being sort of this grandson of a eunuch. And eunuch were viewed as subhuman for the castration and also for their corruption and influence to the emperor. So the scholar class or the gentry class of the time looked down on them. So Cao Cao was heavily influenced by that. He also didn't like the fact that he came from this background, and he executed plenty of scholars who made fun of him for that. This was sort of a sore spot of his childhood. He looked down on the eunuchs as well. He participated in the massacre of most of the eunuch at court with Yuan Shao after He Jin's assassination, but that's going to sort of predate this. This happens before the start of the game in 190. But the father actually turned down Cao Cao's proposal to borrow money to start sort of this warlord career to oppose the court. He was retired at the time. He made a very handsome move late in his career as the last emperor, Liu Hong, needed money. So he was starting to sell jobs. So essentially you could buy high court positions if you were rich enough. And Cao Song was super rich. So he bought a position, one of the 3 excellency positions, very high level, top tier court positions, I believe for 5 million copper coins. And after 6 months on the job, so he gets the status and prestige of being a Grand Excellency, he retires and gives the position back to the emperor to sell again. So basically doing the emperor a double favor. And then he pretty much goes home to live out the rest of his day in comfort. His son, however, is opposed to Dongzhuo, who comes to power after Emperor Liu Hong's sudden death at a very young age, leaving behind a child emperor. And Cao Cao is saying, you know, we're going to oppose the government now. The dad doesn't want that. The dad has very good connections still with many of the princes in the area, and he doesn't want to be casted out as a traitor to the Han, because even though Dongzhuo was viewed as a tyrant by many, officially he was still the leader of the court. He was sort of a overpowering regent. So if you oppose him, you're also opposing the emperor to a degree, which is why we're at war with the Han Empire in the beginning. So he actually ditches Cao Cao. He takes the rest of the family, including some of Cao Cao's brothers. I think Cao Cao had 2 younger brothers. And they move. They move to Langya, which is a princedom at the time. And his father was very good friends with the prince who ruled that princedom at the time. And they basically settled there to retire. Cao Cao is left behind with no money, but he managed to persuade a local wealthy man, Wei Zi, who gives him cash to raise his first militia army. And he takes that army, goes to the coalition. The coalition is bickering, doesn't want to chase Dongzhuo. So Cao Cao takes that army and chases after Dongzhuo himself, gets attacked by a much stronger force led by Xu Rong, who's a very capable general of Dongzhuo's, and he gets crushed. Cao Cao almost dies. The man who gave him the fund to build the army also dies in this battle. Cao Cao barely escapes back, and thanks to some of his family member and clan member who started recruiting troops in the south, or at least in the Central Plains, he rebuilds a second force, but he's much weaker. He's lost all trust with the coalition, and that's where we find ourselves. We're going to start expanding ourselves, and we'll take some of these land. We'll basically expand down to the livestock farm, and we'll probably retake Pengcheng. Even though historically we don't really take Pengcheng here, but since they're given to Yellow Turban rebels, we can grab these on our way to Dong, or else it's going to be a pretty difficult track through these forests. We would like to stay on the road and also build up our wealth so we can afford a better army. So things like that, you know, it's also not supposed to be in our court. Lady Bian is not married to us yet. We haven't met her. We have a different wife right now who's supposed to be Lady Ding, who's our main wife. Lady Bian was a concubine for a long time. We have Cao Pi, who is 3. Oh, actually, we have met her then. She's supposed to be here, but she's not the main wife at this time. But regardless, Cao Pi is 3. Cao Ang, who is our son with another concubine, actually. Our first wife, Lady Ding, couldn't have kids, but she brought over a maid called Lady Liu, who gave birth to Cao Ang, and Cao Ang's being raised by Lady Ding as our eldest son. So technically, he should be heir, but the game obviously have different ideas. We're going to get Cao Pi as heir before Cao Ang dies fighting against Zhang Xiu, but that's way down the line. We'll get to that. Our starting army is actually really good. We have a heavy tiger and leopard cavalry that we really can't afford. 340 upkeep per turn, super expensive. We don't need this unit. We should get rid of it. And honestly, historically, we can't get this until we unite the north. The heavy and tiger and leopard cavalry was sort of organized sort of during the Guandu campaigns, and we formed this expert riders that were basically auxiliary units from the nomadic tribes, and they became the tiger and leopards. Alright, first battle, we have 61% chance of capture. We could delegate this fight, but we're going to try to fight this super clean so that we can do diplomacy after this. If you're playing for the first time, do diplomacy before. Diplomacy is very big in Three Kingdom, very useful, and something you should do every turn just to make sure you find your best deals. And the reason why I say you want to do it before is because if you take any casualties here, you're going to look weaker.
当趁此良机整顿乱民，强梁和灭，小小当诛，肃清天下，在古一人。
We'll have Cao Cao give his little speech. Essentially, if you look weaker in diplomacy, you get less value for everything you offer. We're trying to keep him alive, so we're not going to duel him, even though that would afford us a lot of good experience. We're going to keep our troop in the back. For historical fans, Total War 3 Kingdoms not exactly the best historical title, because generals are just overpowered. They're single entity units, they're basically heroes. For those who are a fan of Romance of Three Kingdoms as a novel, super realistic. You have people riding into armies that's 100,000 strong and killing a bunch and then coming out. Exactly what's going to happen here, as we're going to charge our generals in and have them sort of take care of it. We're going to decline these duels, unfortunately. And even if you want to take the duel for experience, you want to be the one offering the duel. You want to ask him to duel you. You get much more experience that way. If you accept the duel, it's less. Alright, we're just going to charge in here. Cavalry in Three Kingdom feels really great. Now, even with one horse here, the charge, as you can see, we'll do a bunch. We're going to leave the general alone. Now, killing him on the field here is probably not going to affect our capture rate, but he is level 1 with no resiliency, so I don't want to risk it. We're going to first give ourselves Unbreakable and some evasion, and then I might dismount Xiaohodun, because the hamstring ability is not a very good AoE when you're mounted, but it does give a nice little... Actually, can we charge into this? Gives a nice little circular splash damage if we are on foot. So we're just going to try to just put ourselves in the middle of things, which is harder than it sounds, as they're keeping their line pretty steady. They're not fighting back. Alright, we're just going to do it. The cooldown's short enough that we can get a second use here. And here's our nice little circular splash. Massive damage. Also comes back. Cleaning this up. And the cooldown's only 30 seconds, but there's a 15-second duration on it because there's some debuff on the ability. So technically 45 seconds of use. And we're not going to kill him. We're just going to hit him a couple times, let the army loss, let his damage sort of drop his morale to a point where he just routes. Also, we'll hunt down a few kills, gather some experience. But no one's really going to level up here since, you know, we're starting at rank 3, which is very high starting rank. So just killing a few units here and there is not going to be enough for the experience. We're also not giving experience to most of our troops since we're not going to be keeping most of our troop early on. Like I said, many of them are a little bit too advanced and they have just way too much upkeep costs for us to keep efficiently early on. Let's see if we can drop him low enough. Gotta watch not to kill him. Time to drop his speed a little bit. And he's done. Let's just not kill him. Pull our general away and see if we capture him here. Decisive victory is pretty much the highest we can expect here. Heroic victory only happens when you are the weaker force going to a fight. So that's going to give us the highest possible capture chance. Now I believe Saholdun might actually have a 10% capture chance skill. So maybe if we swapped him as the lead, it would have been better. Not sure on that though. We got him. So lucky us, we captured him. And the reason why this matters so much is because of this background trait that he has. He's named as the agricultural reformer. This is not a default generic background. He's a historical character. As a matter of fact, most characters you see in the game are going to be historical characters. And some of them are given sort of the semi-unique background titles, which is the case here. And they give special bonuses. So we get a unique assignment that's called agricultural development. This gives -2 turns to constructing agricultural buildings. We can use him as sort of a assignment character early on and then transition him to administrator, where he gives his other 2 bonus, where he gets -30% construction cost for all green buildings and also -1 construction time. So overall, he's great for building up green buildings, which are peasantry income-focused buildings. There are 3 types of income in the game. There's peasantry for all the farming and agricultural ones. There are industry for the purple buildings, and there's commerce, which are blue buildings. So given that Cao Cao's faction unique building is green, this is going to be very useful. It also has a special farm upgrade building, so we want to build those, and he's going to be perfect for that job. So we're going to employ him here. And here's your choices post-battle. Typically, you just want to go ransom, get some money, unless your army's in really bad shape. But even then, 1% replenishment's not really going to cut it. Most of the time, you're not going to have supply issues. You can check your current supply here. When you don't have supply, you cannot replenish. And you also suffer attrition. So default of 8 military supplies, rarely used. Another key difference for new players to be mindful of is that these choices will affect diplomacy, opinions of the enemy faction with you. Ransom is the friendly option. The faction will like you because you're treating their soldiers with respect, you're letting them back. If you force them to be recruited or seize their supplies, it's a negative effect against diplomacy. So oftentimes defaulting to ransom is a great idea. In Three Kingdom, it's one of the few Total War games where it's super beneficial to fight a war and not finish off your opponent, because you can win, have a big swing in diplomacy, shift of power, and then ask them to basically pay you retribution for the war. You basically will gain most of your wealth that way, and it's beneficial to keep factions alive. In other Total War games, sometimes the faction just hates you so much you can't have that option of peace, but that's not the case here. And it's more realistic, because that's basically what happens in history. You beat someone down, they pay you money for fighting the war, and war becomes profitable. So we're supposed to take Pei Xian, which is Pei County, which is in the county of Chen. And we'll get support of the people, some extra public water for managing our commanderies, which is another word for provinces, different words used for subdivision of territory in Chinese history. And then we get 25 points of faction support, which is basically the support we gain for conquering foreign land. Until that goes back to 100, we'll suffer some negative penalties to public water. It's not a big deal. It's a little bit annoying when you're rapidly expanding, but that's not really what holds you back in Total War 3 Kingdoms. The anti-snowball mechanic in Total War 3 Kingdoms called corruption. It comes from holding too much land. That's something you do have to care about and you do have to battle. Some bonus experience for our first win. We'll get some for our first defeat, but we can't actually suffer a defeat in this campaign. Not allowed. So just looking at the skill tree here, he actually did not have patience, which is the increased capture rate chance. This is only applied to the commanding officer, which is the leftmost character on the army panel. You can up to 3 generals. Each general have up to 6 units, which are called their retinue. These units are locked in place. They cannot be swapped out. They can be swapped out, they cannot be traded amongst each other. They're locked onto the general you recruited to them to. You can switch them, of course, but you cannot basically move them to another general, which is common in other Total War games. So we didn't lose out anything. Rank 3, we maximized our capture chance, and we did capture him. Very lucky though. It doesn't always happen. I hear complaints all the time from people who checked out my guides on how to start. Just cannot capture the guy, even on the latest patch. But you see here, first try, got him. And because we captured him, he gets an extra fondness towards us because it's a capture turn employee. And this helps keep his satisfaction high because we spared and employed him. That's 15 points that's going to sort of stay there. And then 15 points of faction fondness. And essentially, if we keep them happy, anything above the red face, which is going to be 25 points out of 100, we are not going to suffer any penalties for the faction. If people are angry with us, then we will have penalties to our entire court, which will be shown over here. Any bonuses will also be shown over here. And more dangerously, those characters can be turned into spies against our faction through the turncoat mechanic. We also have that mechanic. We also have active spy slots open, but no one in any faction that we know of wants to be a turncoat, or else we will have an option to add them as a spy candidate here. Cao Cao specializes in spying, and for each spy position he has, he also gets a pawn to use for his scheme, which is his faction unique mechanic. There are so many things here. It's actually kind of hard to cover all of them, but essentially we have a resource called credibility. This resource can be gained sometime using different schemes. There are schemes that will add to our credibility, and there are schemes that will spend it. And essentially the goal here, we can also increase it with imperial favor, and we can use this to start proxy wars. We can use this to alter negotiations and diplomacy to our favor, and also use them to enact different schemes. There are 4 categories of schemes: character-based, faction-based, commandery-based, and army-based. Essentially, what are we targeting? Are we targeting a certain character? Are we targeting a certain faction? Are we targeting a certain commandery on the map, or a certain army on the map? There are so many things we can do. We're not going to go over all of them. Essentially, you will pick a scheme that you want to do. You must have a pawn available. Once again, each pawn represents a spy position. So if we unlock more spy positions, we get more pawns to use here. And we'll basically pick one. Let's say, for example, we want to do this. Unlocks a new reform immediately. Super powerful. Usually you get a free reform every spring. Not normally. Happens every spring. And when it's not in spring, that's a requirement for this one, we get one instantly. Always do this one, because not only do you speed up your reform, you also get 20 points of credibility to build up your faction unique resource. So definitely something you want to do. You can see that at higher levels, the decay rate of them, and also how much imperial favor we're building up, which is going to be important once we do hold on to the emperor and whatnot. But let's grab this one. We'll target ourselves, of course, and we'll get ourselves an instant reform. So this is sort of the reform tree, literally a tree. And it's also our tech map, basically. We start out with this free one called Regional Commissioners. Pretty straightforward. Recruitment cost for us is going to be 8% cheaper. And we have a lot of choices here. We basically have a blue region of the tree, which sort of focuses on commerce. We have a purple region, focuses on industry. A gold region that focuses on, or I guess call it yellow region, focuses on sort of administration, assignments, administrator slots. Red focuses on war, and green focuses on peasantry income and farming and food. For commerce, there's also spies, assignments, character experience. For this, it's basically money, building, commandery management, and so forth. And they sort of correlate to the 5 phases of Chinese elements. We're talking about water, wood, metal, earth, and fire, each corresponding to a color here. And you also see that on character skill trees. That's a running theme that the game employs throughout. We're going to pick up this one. The foreign envoys, we will basically get 1 additional trade agreement early on. We can try to trade with our neighbors, lock them all in, so that we can make money. It's a win-win for both factions. There is what's called a trade influence. It's sort of a multiplier for how trade wealth is exchanged. So if we go into diplomacy now, we can see there's the regular negotiate with every faction we know. And there's quick deals, which is very useful. We're looking to secure trade agreements. We have up to 2 partners, thanks to our reform that we just picked up. And we see that we have 2 willing partners, people with positive diplomatic values, 0.4 and 1.4, so we can ask for more. And we can look at the trade value here. So we can make 370 per turn. And essentially that value depends on our overall economy. There's a base pool of money. In this case, I'm pretty sure it's going to be 740 between the 2 of us for the trade. If we have more resources, which we kind of saw earlier on the trade influence, that value will increase. And then depending on our trade influence value, we have 100 points. In the beginning game, they should have 100 points. And basically we split it. And it will be 50-50 because it's 100 plus 100 divided by 2. We have 100 each. If we have, say, 200 points and he still has 100 points, then it's out of 300. We'll split 2/3 of the total pie. Now, on turn 1, people also have their items unequipped. We also have our starting items, which is randomized. And let's see what we actually got. We always start with a herdsman, I believe. And we get a devious attendant, and we got ourselves a clay dog and a stone pig. So actually a super bad draw of items. And we can see what other factions started with and see if we want any of them. In this case, there's really nothing that super important here, so we don't have to do anything. We also start with the surplus food. So surplus food have other bonuses that can provide us, but overall they're better used in diplomacy because we're actually starting out in an area with lots of food in the central plain. So if we just trade him 1 food for 1.5 value, we can try to juice more payment from him. Our credibility, which we just built up, can be used in diplomacy to trade. They trade 1 for 1, basically 60 points to 6 points, or 10 to 1, better ratio. Very useful to push deals through. And we can also use credibility to sort of start proxy wars in the future. If we have 75 credibility points, we'll just basically offer 75 points to ask them to go to war with another faction. Also very useful for our attempt to follow history by setting up the correct opponents for each of our AI factions. We're going to be a very busy person trying to make things work. And right now, I just want cash. Early on, you want to build up your economy. You need to borrow money from other factions, essentially with these deals, so that you can expand out your commanderies. Now, sometimes the values, they don't round up yet. So we're trying to find that point where we push them over and we're going to juice every last penny out of them. It's probably going to be 80 here. Nope, 79. Nope. A little bit more. You don't have to do it. It's not a big difference. We got, what, 40 extra for that little bit of work? It'll die. Now, one thing you do have to consider is that if you plan to go to war with these factions, then don't make any deals, because that's going to complicate things. In our case, since we're following our historical path, we actually don't take control of Intron until much later. So we can totally go to war here. We'll later with these factions and we don't have to take their land. So making a deal, keeping them around for these trade values, definitely better for us. You can see here we can also set up marriages with single men or women. That's within our family. They have to have this icon, and we can marry someone from their family of the opposite gender. In this case, it's not a historical marriage. We can obviously marry our dad. You can either have their character come over to our faction or have our character go to their faction. Both are fine. They will have different values. Their character will join our faction. Obviously, they don't like that. But if we say offer a marriage, marry our dad away, they like that. And we can totally do this if we really wanted the money. Historically, our dad is retired elsewhere. He's not married into another faction. You can use this technique to get some early game value, but we're not going to do that. Unless he has a really good item. That's the only thing that we might sway us. He does not. So our dad gets to stay. You can also look at things like non-aggression pact to make sure they don't attack you, but if you have a trade deal, usually the AI is not going to do anything. We're going to hold on to that last food we have unless he's not offering much. He's poor. He starts out just in a farmland, doesn't generate income, so that he doesn't have money, which is why we have to kind of throw this food in there just to get this deal through. We'll be fine, because we're going to be taking that farmland right away. Dongzhuo, we're at war with him. We are enemies to the Han. We can sign a positive, but it's only 0.1, so there's really no point. You can, however, take a look at everyone's starting item on turn 1 only. And there's something like Legalist Fanatic that gives satisfaction faction-wide. Super good item to maintain your court happiness early on. This is something definitely worth considering to trade, just to grab those things. Obviously, if you're at war with them, you can't do that. Something like this, representationist, to get 10% trade influence boost, to sway those trade deals so that we make a bit more money, also works. But less important, I think satisfaction is definitely one of the more important things early on. We already saw his items. Right, so basically, our dear friend Yuan Shao, how much do you want for this? It's going to be super expensive given it's a silver tier. It goes from no color to bronze to silver to gold. So he's going to ask 9.2. We really can't offer him anything to make this happen, except for cash. We can throw 2 of our bronze items. Even this is not enough. We're pretty far away. I don't think we want to use that much credibility here. I can offer him cash. We can always make the money back. Let's see. If we make payment versus lump sum, and let's see the value if we do per turn. Obviously he likes that more, but it's going to hurt us more. To get to 4.0, sounds like a GPA here, but we are not going to have enough to do that. We're going to have to give him everything we own, plus a bit more. We can wait. We can capture this new piece of territory, and then we have more food to trade, and hopefully we can turn that into something. Yeah, we rolled very bad starting items. Basically a common and an uncommon. Could have got silver items here, which would facilitate our trade, but we got the character we're looking for, so can't really complain. Let's speed up our movement. You just hit R to speed up your movement of character on the campaign map. And we have a pretty easy fight here as well. We're going to have our generals do the damage since we want them to get the experience. After this battle, we'll kind of revamp our army a little bit. Alright, same thing, pull everyone back. We'll just use the generals for this. Piece of cake. They're over here. Now, we are friends with each other. It brings additional benefits to us on the battlefield. You can also become rivals, which is not a bad thing. You get damage boost. We're gonna pick off the archer first. Because we're playing on harder difficulty, the archer will not shoot the general as long as there's other targets available on the map. Since it's considered a waste of ammo, since you're shooting all that ammo out at just 2 guys, and most of that will miss, they just basically change the AI behavior where they don't waste the ammo on the general if there's other targets available to hit. We can do this on 3 times speed. It's just going to be... Let's get Xiaohodun. I can't click him. There we go. Back in here. Now, there's a good chance we get dismounted here because we're running right into Spear. We didn't, so we're going to actually actively dismount him because our ability just hits so much better when we, let's see if we can get in the middle when we're dismounted. Alright, they're charging me, which is great. So nice little crowd around me, and then we do a nice little damage to kill lots of them. And then we're just going to be stuck here for a bit. Cao Cao will do a nice charge from behind and also give him some melee evasion so he doesn't take too much damage. But even if he does, we'll be fine. As you can see, that's the dismounted animation. We ran to some braced spears from the front. It's hard to tell sometimes. Like in the case of Xiaohodun charging in, didn't do really much for him. Alright, they're gonna chain route here. We're focused on the weaker one. We're about to do our splash damage one more time around us. Nice little splash. That murdered so many. 189 kills off of that. And we have won. We only have Xiaohodun on the horse. We're going to remount him so that we can have a chase, or else the experience is going to be split with every single unit on the field, including ones we're getting rid of. So we're just trying to get the experience on our generals. Cao Cao can't chase anymore. It's the edge of the map. It's not going to take very long. Alright, they're gone. Let's switch to this. He's probably going to hit level 4 soon after these kills here. The duel would have been worth way more, but it's nice to get the character. They managed to escape. No more experience for us. So you see 0 kills here, but once we load out of the screen into the campaign map, you'll see the remaining number of troops, which will all get killed, will be split evenly to every unit. We're trying to limit that experience share. And for captured territories, we're going to go with just occupy. This way we don't really damage the area that we're conquering. We get a little bit of extra faction support to kind of ease sort of the invader feel. We'll lose some population. Not a big deal. We get support from the people. And our next mission, build our first building. And we get this very crucial your economy grows bonus for 3 turns. It's crucial because having a discounted construction cost and discounted construction time speeds up your economy by a lot. So we definitely want to take full advantage of this. So we kind of want to control when we complete our first building. Since this is a faction-wide effect, the more land we hold, say if we hold Pengcheng as well, when we activate this, then the more places we can take advantage of that bonus. So we definitely want to take control of this next turn. We're going to be marching this army over. And we'll queue up a building. So we specialize in peasantry income. And we say specialized because they're a building that provide multipliers to different income type. So for example, this building within the green agricultural building called government support will give us multipliers to peasantry income. It will not be applied to, say, industry income or commerce income. So if we're going to be specialized in peasantry income, we have this building here, which is off the land development chain. We can also consider things like the tax collection. There is a negative penalty to public order. People don't like getting taxed, but we get peasantry income. So we kind of want to specialize for one thing, or perhaps a combination of 2, sometimes 3. The reason why you can't do as many as you want is because the building slots are limited. Once you hit large regional city, you get the full 6 building slot. You get 5 as small regional. If you're just starting out the game, I highly recommend you to get to city and just stop for a while, because the way population works is it's limited by the cap, the population cap provided at each level of the settlement. So you can see the 1 million population capacity here. It will grow up to 1 million if you have growth, right? We're assuming you have growth. Most places will have growth. And then you'll stop. And then when you have high population, you also bring high public order issues. So over leveling doesn't really do you any good, especially before you unlock those buildings. And we'll explain some of the intricate details with the buildings as we build them. But essentially here, look at your counties, the smaller counties. If they're producing food, they're producing peasantry, then you kind of want to build the main settlement to focus and kind of work with your counties. So in this case, we're going to focus on peasantry. It will take 2 turns to complete. You could rush any building. It will cost you money. Depending on how many turns are left and how expensive the building is, it will change the cost of the instant construction. You can wait till next turn to become cheaper. If the building is a higher level building, it'll be more expensive for the same 2 turns and whatnot. In our case, building the tax collection has another purpose. It's a free building. So we're trying to build it and take advantage of not spending much to get some income back. All buildings are sort of losers for a good amount of turn. So for example, building the inn, 2 turns costs us 1,550 and we get 110 back per turn. It will take close to 14 turns to pay it back. So it's a loser for the first 14 turns after you build it, which is why you want to see things. Actually, it's probably 16 turns if you take consideration that you pay and then you wait 2 turns before you even get any money back. So you're buying for future income with all the buildings. So any way to reduce the cost or reduce the time will speed up your rate of return on the building, which is why we want to take full advantage of your economy growth in the future. For now, we do a free building. The rate of return on this is going to be infinite, basically. So that's what we are doing here. And we're going to revamp our army, but first, maybe a little bit more diplomacy. We got 2 food from this livestock. We have an item that we kind of want, and he's not going to equip it yet until next turn. There's another reason why you kind of want to get rid of these items from the AI factions, because of spying. If at the end of the turn this turn, we didn't take this item, Yuan Shao is going to equip this himself. He's a faction leader. He's going to give everyone in his faction 6 points of satisfaction. It's going to make them happy to be in his faction. And therefore, we have a lower chance of turning them into turncoats in the future if we want to get those characters to join us, or to do things like assassinate him, because we need to try to get him close to his natural death date of May of 202. So we don't want them to have these things. Legalist Fanatic for 6 points, Concubine for 10 points, Philosophers for 10 points. Those are things you want to get for your own faction. So we're going to try to do that. We'll offer him a mix of item here, and then that's not enough. We saw that. But what about food, right? We can give him both food. I think it's fine. We're going to have more farming coming up online later. And the rest we're going to make up with cash. It's probably going to take most of our cash, work our way down, see how much we get to keep. That's why free building is also very important. We're tweaking this a little bit. It's probably around 1,200. It's more than I thought. We nickel and dime for every penny. Or I nickel and dime for every penny. But we got the item. And then we're going to equip that on our faction leader here. You can see everyone's satisfaction before. And then we snap this on. Everyone's magically 6 points happier. It might be more than that because we're boosting authority as well, which is a stat. You can see the 5 phases: 金木水火土, earth, wood, water, fire, and oh, not earth, metal. Earth is down here, and each of them gives different bonuses that you can utilize. And for faction leaders, prime ministers or heir, you want to focus on authority. In this case, we're building more of that. It also has sky high authority. The first bar is 100 points. The double bar, it's the second 100 points, is out of 200 here. And different skills will give you different points. You can see +8 authority here if we learn that skill, for example. And we can also equip our other items. We have one item left, a little bit more resolve for Saholdun. The color on the character represents class. Green is champion, they're focused more on resolve. And you can see that yellow are commanders, they're more focused on authority. It's color coded throughout the game, pretty simple. The units are also color coded for the same reason. And the units. We're done with diplomacy, so we don't care about our military strength going forward. We're going to get rid of some of the more expensive units and free up our cash. So we don't need this. I do want to keep one cavalry unit, and the militia mounted saber definitely is the good choice. Especially you want to color code most of your units. There are reasons for this. And the reason is mainly because the skills kind of synergize. So for example, on the commander tree, a yellow skill such as nobility will give your melee cavalry, which are the yellow cavalry, 20 additional range block chance. So if we have them, they're in our retinue, they get these skill synergies. Aside from that, you don't have to follow this rule since the skills are not entirely color-coded. So we'll see things like just boosting our retinue's charge speed. So even red cavalries will be great. Or just running speed, so any cavalry will be great. And then there's also fire arrows, so if we want to recruit a couple archers, that's fine too. So it's not entirely color-coded, but it's definitely a good rule to follow. We are not going to need that, and we're also not going to need that. For Saholdun here, who is a champion green character, he has things that increase armor for spear infantry, which is why they're here. We're going to keep these two spear guards. They're quite good. They're going to be what we use pretty much through early to mid game. The saber militia, however, we're going to get rid of. So just simplify army a little bit here, and we're hopefully going to add another character. Each army can have up to 3 generals. We're also going to make Saholdun the leader, since he has the flexibility skill. So when he's commanding, the whole army heals back 5% more. So just make him the commanding general. He pops over to the left spot. They give slightly more experience post-battle than the other generals. And they also will apply any sort of win commanding skills. You pretty much want champions and vanguards in this position for the reach skill, since it gives you more movement. So he's going to sit here pretty much going forward as well. And that's pretty much everything we're going to do on turn 1. We can use our final scheme, but we can kind of pick and choose here what we want to do. Building up a bit more of our credibility could be an option. We could have done this. Actually, it wouldn't have mattered too much, because even though we are going to increase our diplomatic standings with all factions, it's going to be on the trending value. So basically, whatever we currently have with them as a diplomacy point, it's going to be the same. But it's going to trend higher where they're going to like us more by 20 points throughout the next few turns. So it's not really going to affect our turn 1 deals, but definitely something worthwhile considering. For commandery, the ones that are grayed out means we don't have the right condition. The requirement's not active on it, so that's why we can't do it. If there's certain ones you want to do, look at the requirement, see why you can't do it, and then just basically alter things to help you. We can increase our army movement applied instantly when it's below 10%. It's not going to help us because we conquered a piece of land. When you do occupy a new commandery, you lose all your movement rights. So even if we use this now, we can't move another half of our movement range. So I think the only one that makes sense is actually just this. Rival tigers and 1 prey. And we'll make ourselves look better in the eyes of all other factions. We used up our pawns. You can see the cooldown requirement for each pawn. They come back, we can use it again, and our credibility has been built up quite nicely. So that pretty much exhausts our options. Faction Council happens every spring, and they require us to have certain court positions. The ones with the gold border are the ones that are in our Faction Council. They give very interesting dilemmas for us to pick every year. They require us to be certain prestige rank. So faction rank need to hit 2nd Marquis to get a Grand Commandant. Right now we start with the Chancellor. Now the Chancellor, if you hover, you will see that you get 15% additional peasantry income faction-wide from all your commanderies. Our base peasantry right now is 70, I believe. Actually, no, it's upgraded 1, so 110. And even if we complete the tax collection, Oh, actually, we also own the livestock farm. So let's say it's around 250. 15% of that, it's not enough to make up for the salary increase on Xiaohodun to get this position. We have to pay 250 extra per turn to get 15% of 250. It's a money loser. Unless your character absolutely hates you, have a satisfaction issue, and these positions will grant no desire for higher office until they hit rank 8, and administrators will be no desire until they hit rank 4. Basically, you can see the satisfaction change based on their desire for a court position. That's the only reason you might want to consider this. Aside from that, wait till late game. The Chancellor position will make you money when you have a ton of peasantry income. So for example, if your base peasantry throughout your entire holding is 2,000, then this makes you 300 per turn minus the 250, you're netting only 50. It's not a lot of money, so it's only good in the late game. Or if you're desperate to get someone happy. If they're ready in the red, or if they're a 0, they're going to leave you next turn. So if you don't want them to leave you, then you would give them that position. Anyhow, we looked at spies. Record's kind of useless. It basically shows you what you've done. And then treasury only activates once we hit a higher rank, where we can fluctuate our tax rate, kind of change how much we're taxing, which will affect the public order as well as the food we get. And that won't really matter right now. We can also assign a couple assignments. Our newest addition will be getting a position soon. You can see the unavailable. He has the regular tax collection for being a commander, but he also has this agricultural development, which we will use later. Right now, I think we just throw our wife, who will also become our heir at this point, into a assignment position to get us more peasantry income for the next 15 turns. It takes her 1 turn to get onto the job and also 1 turn to come back. You can see it takes her 1 turn to get there. And the reason why we don't want a baby to be our faction heir, even though he is our son, is because we are not going to get any of the bonuses from his character until he comes of age, which is when he hits 16. In the meantime, we will like some more faction bonus. So Lady Bian gives 5 points of satisfaction. And then another 7 points here. And then once she picks up the relevant abilities, there's these 4 here that gives something for being a Prime Minister, heir, or faction leader. Those will all be applied. We can change her weapon to give more authority. I'm trying to just basically juice up this satisfaction boost. And that's going to do it. So it has to be a family member. And then we're just going to make her heir. Let's hope he's going to be a little sad, but babies don't run away from you, so that's totally fine. And we're good for turn 1. Alright, so a couple of notifications at the beginning turn. We have 3,000 in our holding, or projected income. So we unlocked a title. Titles are things we can give to our generals that will give bonuses, fixed satisfaction. Some have additional bonuses to armies, some have additional bonuses to commanderies if they're administrator and so forth. You can see they're locked until certain conditions are met. In this case, we got Steward of Changlo Palace, the Palace of Eternal Happiness, and we basically can boost commerce income in a commandery if they are administrator. We currently don't have any administrator positions. So that's just not super relevant. We also get some characters we can recruit. These are wandering officers who have come to our court asking if they can join us. The best thing you can do here is, before the notification goes away next turn, is just right click on the character to kind of pull up their information screen. You can see what background title they have, what bonuses you can expect, what traits they have. These are things you want to look for when determining whether you want them or not. In this case, these are all pretty generic looking. You can tell if they have artwork or they just look like another face. And sometimes you don't really want characters who are higher level. You also want to consider who they work for before they joined you. It could be a case where they're being sent as a spy against your faction. And we can send spies to other factions too if they're willing to spy, which is a symbol that will be on the character card. We might see one. There we go. That's the symbol you're looking for. It's the same symbol as the espionage or undercover network. If they have this symbol, it means they're willing to spy for you if you recruit them. It also means they cannot be a spy for another faction because there's no double agents in the game. So if you see the symbol, you can disregard past loyalties. It means they're safe to recruit. If you don't see this symbol, then you have to kind of gauge the faction that they come from and whether that faction has, you know, available spy slots, whether they're high enough rank to have spies, and whether they're likely to spy against you or not. In this case, we have 3 very generic characters. We're going to ignore them. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that it doesn't show you their items. You can see those things here. You can see all their items in this menu here. And they have a good item. That's a very good reason to recruit them, because for most item of bronze or silver tier and higher, you can get more than $1,000 for having that item and trade it in diplomacy. So spending 1,000 to get a character, take their item away, and then firing them, sometimes you can even banish them if you have good satisfaction, which we do. You can even get some money back. And for characters below tier 4, so tier 3, you get 800. For characters above tier 3, so in this case, one of these level 4 characters, you actually get 600 extra. You get 1,600 for firing them. So we can actually hire one, kick them out by banish. Everyone that's still in our faction will hate us a little bit, 5 points, to get a little scared. But then we make some money. So it's a desperate way to make some cash. But anyways, that's pretty much it. Tells us where things have been. They moved their capital here. It means they lost some land elsewhere. Doesn't really matter for us. We're going to take Pengcheng with our army here. We can add a new general now. And there's a lot of choices here. Essentially, I think it comes down to whether we want Xiaohuyuan and Xiaohudun to develop an oath-worn relationship. They are family already. They're cousins. So let's add him in. It's very expensive. Recruitment cost is quite high. And he has 2 cavalry. Now, these cavalry are not going to come fully replenished. Three Kingdom, like Thrones of Battania, runs on a mustering system. So units come in with very little health. And over time, they get those health back up. So you're starting out with a weak unit. And you're getting what's called a mustering bonus if you don't move the army. So basically, they're recruiting those armies where they're located. And then once they're ready to go, you're good. So it's a bad thing to recruit and then move if you want to keep the units, which is what we kind of want to do. We kind of want to move, right? We don't need him to join us in the fight. He's pretty useless. He does not have good abilities until he unlocks Flame of the Phoenix, which takes way too many ranks. Each rank only unlock 1 skill. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is like the fastest we can expect to get Flame of the Phoenix. He's still okay before then, just not as useful. So we're just not going to recruit him. We're going to just run this army, take this, and then recruit him afterwards so that he can sit here and replenish a little bit. Now, this is a tough fight. We're not projected to win this. There's a lot of units, but generals are really strong, and we can make this work. So we're going to fight this. And hopefully pick up the county that goes with Pengcheng before an AI faction does, so that we have our path cleared to take the Dong Commandery. Now, another thing about army composition when determining who you want to add to the army is you kind of want a strategist in every army, a blue general. We just don't happen to start with a blue general, which is a bit rough. There's nothing we can do about that. Now, I kind of want my cavalry unit to be over here. We might utilize sort of a multi-front. Now, the generals are going to charge in by themselves. The infantry is never going to join. So we're going to actually spread the infantry to other locations so we can spread the enemy forces to multiple gates. And then we don't have to deal with all of them at the same time. So they have a much smaller force here. We're going to charge over here for that. Now, the towers in Three Kingdoms hurt. And we're going to have to do a little zigzag action to dodge a lot of the arrows as we move closer. And then quickly charge in. Now, these are not spear units, so they're not going to knock us off our horses. You have to be a polearm unit, and you have to be braced to do that. In this case, we're fine. We're going to cut inside here and kill these archers. I kind of want to use that cavalry later on to get in here to help us, but we're going to have to kind of draw their attention first. Alright, it's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to try to rout them. And then right here, we're going to give ourselves melee evasion. We're going to dismount Xiaohodun to take full advantage of his hamstring ability while dismounted. It's not an AoE when he's on his horseback. If he activates, there we go. That should make quick work of these units. And we actually want to remount so we can join Cao Cao on the chase. The red flag means they have a chance to regroup and bounce back. The white flag means they're done, they're shattered, they're not going to come back. So we just want to chase the one until they turn white. And then we're going to go over here to this because they blockaded this. We can hit this and break it, but that takes way too long. And we don't have time for that. So we're just going to sit here, take some arrow damage, and capture this point so they no longer fire at us. Kill this group. Also dismount. Slap. There we go. Remount. And we're going to go for the city center. Now this is called a capture point because this does not give us a win. Victory points do. Capture points do not. The settlement has to be high enough level to have a victory point. You will know when they have a wall. In this case, it doesn't have a wall. It's a minor settlement. It's only level 3. Settlements get walls at level 4. See how many towers they have? We can't really fight within those towers. We will get absolutely murdered. So that's the tricky part. How do we convince them to chase us? We're going to sit here and maybe hide our units. Right now they're still posturing defensively at our units outside. We're going to hide them in the forest. And maybe when they don't see anyone, they will come and deal with our generals. You see the eye means they're invisible now. So maybe he will relocate. No interest. Alright, we might have to just tough this one out and fight these two right here under... Oh, that's a lot of overlapping towers. This is an easier target. Give ourselves a little bonus. Alright, we're going to see if we can capture this point while Xiaohodun try to dismount here and do his thing. I gave him the dismount command, he's just not doing it. There we go. We have captured it. We have more unit weight on it, so each unit has sort of this capture value. So even though they're standing on it as well, we have 2 guys that have 1 unit. So we can force the capture. We still have to fight one of these. I think we get army loss after they have 1 unit left. So we're just going to take some damage and tough this out and probably try to kill the archers. Maybe we can capture these beforehand. Still very tricky to get shot by so many towers. Alright. See if we can capture this. And then just kill the archer, which is the quick one. And then army loss on this guy, please. Need to make it turn white. Ah, you can see the army loss kicked in, and we are good to go. Tower should be ours soon too. Close victory because our generals took some damage to their health. Even though we never lost a unit, we still lost portions of their health. Alright, we captured a yellow turban commandery. So they build their versions of their building, their different subculture. And what we can do is we can convert them to our version if we like the conversion. In this case, I don't like this building. So we're actually just going to demolish it and take the money. We also don't really need a marketplace here. So we're also going to demolish that. And what was going to happen is that in next turn, we timed up this tax collection completion with the demolish. So we have open slots ready to build when we trigger your economy growth. So we'll be able to take full advantage of that upgrade. And to really take full advantage, we also want to activate this. We want to get agricultural development in. Now, we don't have to get it in Pengcheng because most of the buildings are going to be pretty low level buildings and they're not going to have very long construction time anyways. So when we get your economy grows, which we can see in the mission list, it already has -1 turn. You can't go to 0 turns. You can always have to build 1 turn. So it's a waste to put it in Pengcheng. I think it's better to put this in Chen as well. And this original 4-turn livestock farm upgrade will become just 1 turn. From -1 from your economy grows, and then -2 from that assignment when it kicks in. We also get a lot more food production here. We can use that in diplomacy. So a lot of bonuses for us. Rank up for Xiaohoudun. We're going to pick up reach so the army can move farther. And we're also going to be, let's see, did we get any items? We did not. Picking up Xiaohouyuan. Now, ideally, we get a rank up on Cao Cao, which is, oh, super close. About 600 away. We might wait, because if we do, we actually pick up something called flexibility here, -25% redeployment costs. Deploying them on the field from our pool of generals. If they have units, the units are considered redeployed. So we're paying a portion of their recruitment cost again. And that cost can be reduced if we have, you know, redeployment reduction, which we will have. So this number will drop, and what will most likely happen is we just take this group, we take Pengcheng, and then we recruit him. And then we're basically going to build up our army, and then we're going to take Dong, which is our target that we're trying to get sometime in 191, which is our first time slot, sort of to keep things historical. Always check for spies. You can see here the generals that we want to recruit can be generals we can recruit as spies, send them to a faction. This is not a great way to use spies. Keep the slots open until someone's unhappy in another faction, and they instantly will be a turncoat. So how this works is we recruit a new general, then we send them out into their recruitment pools, hoping that they will recruit them too. And if they do, then they're in the faction, and then they become a spy for you in the faction. It's a 2-step process. The turncoat process is that someone in their faction already is just unhappy with them, and we can just turn them by paying them some money, and then we immediately guarantee to get a spy in their faction. Here, we pay first, and then we're hoping they recruit them. If they don't recruit them, then that character is just useless and take up a slot. So just wait for someone to get unhappy, or you can actually use your schemes to make someone unhappy in their faction, and then sort of get a turncoat in their faction. You can get almost an entire faction to become your turncoats, create civil wars, assassinate their leader. The thing is, just the end game, you can't do much. You can get one of your spies to become their leader, but you can't really get much out of that going forward. So it's not really a big deal, but the process of breaking them down is quite fun. You can also steal their characters, steal their land, using espionage. So it's quite nice. Now we're going to take a look at our possible deals. Nothing here. Let's just continue. And we finished our first building, the tax collection, and we get your economy grows. We're going to take full advantage of this in 3 turns. We're not going to really activate this right away. We need 2 more units, which is easy to do when we summon Xiaohouyuan, who comes with 2 more units. And we'll basically get a nice replenishment boost for the whole faction, some experience boost. We'll try to do this when we revamp a whole army. So we can recruit a character. This is a young event. This is not young, a young officer. This is an event that we get. It's a historical event of picking up Yue Jin, who is going to be one of our 5 elites of the Wei forces. We're going to elevate him. He's brought troops from his hometown. I think historically he's from, I want to say Danyang. Might be wrong. I think he brought spearmen. And Cao Cao at this point really needed troops. So we also picked up a random item at the start of turn. There's always a chance for items. It's armor. It's okay armor. It's for commanders. We can play trade and diplomacy. And here is Yue Jin. He's a sentinel. He's nicknamed the Lion of Yangping. This is a bit weird. Not really historical. I know Chinese know of lions, but it's not a native animal, so it's weird to see as a nickname. He's a short man, but he's a very strict general. And very liked by Cao Cao. He starts out rank 2. We get to pick what direction his skill tree goes. Technically, we want him on the field. We probably want this top line, which is more military. The bottom line is more management. The 3 active or passive skills are in the 1, 3, 5 positions here. We're just going to pick up Zeal and then make him more army focused. He comes with the item. A pretty nice weapon. He might not keep this. We might give it to someone else. He also has fondness because of historical reasons. It's just given to him in the game. And some very decent trait. I think the only thing noteworthy is the lack of desire for higher office, which is satisfaction issues. So he's going to like us. He's not really going to have satisfaction issues, which is great. All right, let's build. That's what we want to do. Oh, we didn't lock this in. We got to save, apply it. We want to upgrade this. You can see it's 1 turn out. It's beautiful. And we're just basically trying to squeeze as many of these upgrades as we can in these 3 turns. Which one makes more sense? Let's see. We get 1,160 to go from 80 income to 100 income. So only a 20-point increase. Very, very bad, to be honest. And then here we go from 90 income to 110. Same thing, but we pay so much more. Of course, you can sell food if you have excess food. In our case, we don't actually have excess food. We go from +2 to -6. We can't handle that. We'll drop to 0. We don't want that. So we're still going to be farming for food. But that ratio is just terrible, right? Both ratios are terrible, to be honest. But paying 1,000 for 20 extra per turn versus paying 2,000 for 20 extra per turn, you can see how bad the payoff is on these buildings. Which is why it's crucial to get as much discount as you can. Or else they're really not worth it. You don't get your income from your buildings until super late game. They don't pay you back until super late game. So you kind of want to just try to build as many free things as you can. Now, we do get a discount these couple turns, and level 1 buildings are great, right? We're paying the same 1,000, but we're getting a 70 extra income boost from 0 to 70 instead of from 70 to 90 or 90 to 110. So that's great. We'll also get a tax building here. We like as many free buildings as we can. We're saving up the cash. We're going to be using it to build a flushed out full army early on. We're going to take another piece of territory here. No one's going to really stop us. We can check a few things. No turncoats available. Cao Cao. So we are going to go to war with him early on. Historically, we didn't get along, mainly because we bored each other and then we kind of took land from him. So he has every reason to be mad at us. And Cao Cao honestly has some of his darkest hours in terms of just pillaging and razing and massacring cities when he was at war with Cao Cao. Of course, Cao Cao was kind of responsible for the death of Cao Cao's father, but Cao Cao definitely played that up to the maximum to basically steal wealth from the Xu province. All right, we'll be taking this. No resistance so far. We do have a decent retinue here, but 3 archers, not going to bother us. We can't use our units. The last fight, we didn't use our units, not because we didn't want to get them experience, but just the tower damage is so high, we didn't really want our units to lose a lot of their numbers just walking up to the settlement. Here, it's an open field battle. We will absolutely use our units. So the key targets are those 3 archers, which are sitting ducks to our cavalry and our general. The snow will slow our movement down a bit, but should not be a big problem. We're going to get our spearmen in the front. Ideally, we have spearmen versus their cavalry, but that might not happen. We're also going to go a little faster. It's going to open up some flanks. They have 2 cavalry, okay. Might be a problem. Cavalry's really hurt. Generals have a hard time fighting cavalry. They're shielding their archers with their spearmen. We don't want to accidentally bump into a spearman and get dismounted here and then get swarmed by enemy units. That's the last thing we want. We want to chase them away from their formation like this and just pick them off, basically. Because there's other units, they're not going to fire on our generals, and they're pretty much in skirmish mode, so they will try to run away when engaged in melee if they can. We're going to apply some pressure with our spearmen. That unit will shoot our cavalry. You can see they don't shoot the generals, but they do shoot the cavalry. And we're just going to have our cavalry sort of clean house here. Cao Cao will also stay with them for a little bit. Cao Cao will try to maneuver over here and try to harass the other archer unit there. The enemy cavalry coming close is a problem, but if we keep advancing our infantry, we should get their attention back into the front. And these two units should have time to just clean up and then come over afterwards. Cao Cao and Cao Cao are more useful because of their abilities, and we want to kind of utilize that to the best. So after that's like that, we can just go back. It's hard for us to pick off that archer, but we kind of stop it from firing. And we can now issue a charge command. Now, spearmen are not good at charging. You can see their charge bonus is quite low. It's only 29, but in this case, we don't really have a lot of units to apply different tactics. We'll take what we can. Looks like they want to fight us over here. I don't really want to fight them over there. Alright, we engaged the cavalry with our spearmen, which is great because we have bonus damage against cavalry units, spears. It's not written anywhere in the game, but it's in the code. Alright, we might get charged over here. I don't want that. See if we can escape them. They need to hurry. Cao Cao needs to get back over here. Give them a melee evasion boost. We'll set up our cavalry here. Honestly, he's better off here and I'm better off there because I can use my ability there. Once we're in range, give them unbreakable, give them charge resistance, give them melee evasion. Oh, they actually routed, so we're going to actually charge back here. A rear charge is very good, even against spears. And then we're going to dismount and slap. And then I'm expecting army loss coming in soon. You can see the rear charge should decimate them. Yep, they're routing right away. And then we're going to screen our spearmen over here because that cavalry is coming, as you can see. And we're just basically picking that fight. We're going to loop out. Cao Cao is going to come pick up these routing units. Before they organize and, recover from their routed state, if you can apply damage on them, they will never recover. So pursuing units is very important. Cao Cao will just basically fight the enemy cavalry with our spearmen, and then we're going to try to loop them over here to join the fight here. Cao Cao is going to be applying the constant damage to make sure they don't bounce back until our cavalry sweeps over. And you can see once they rout, we're good. They bounce back, but they're no match, and we get the win here. And we can spread the remaining experience to all our units. We don't need to pursue because this is a settlement battle, so everyone who survives actually gets killed since there's nowhere to escape. They're part of the garrison. And we actually get a very good building. This building is the Confucian Temple. We're in Luxian, the hometown of Confucius, and we have a temple to him. And it will, once converted to our version, see, their version doesn't really work for us. They have the Grand Temple of the Way, the Yellow Turban version. If we get to the Grand Temple City of Confucius, we get 10 points of satisfaction, 5 points of prestige to help rank our faction up. Currently, we are 18 points away from getting second marquise. We do want this. We can set our taxes. We can get a couple of prestige points to unlock specializations for our faction. Kind of tweak the faction to the way we want it. Definitely want to do that. We can't do this because we have only one building slot and there's no rush. We don't really need these 10 points right away. So let's take advantage of these couple turns where we get your economy growth to build up our economy first, and then we can just convert this later. Now that we're sitting comfortably here, we border two new factions who we're not at war with, Liu Bei and Huang Shao. We don't really want to mess with Liu Bei at this point. We do want to take Dong in 191, which is going to be starting in next year. We have about 5 turns to do it. There's 5 turns per year. So that's going to be our next goal. We're going to build up a strong enough army to take it. It's rank 4, which means it has walls. We don't have any strategists in our faction, so we cannot build any siege weapons. So for us to take that, we have to siege it for at least a turn to build some sort of siege engine so that we can attack it. We did hit our next rank up. as we mentioned. We want to get flexibility here, and that will make picking out Xiaohou a little bit cheaper. Goes from 1,200 to 825. Just trying to save a bit of money. And here you can see that we have two different icons. The regular plus signs are just replenishment. And if you see two, it just means they have high replenishment. And the reason why they have high replenishment is because they have something called mustering. The mustering rate depends on your reforms, your buildings, your assignments. You can alter it, but by default, it's 8 turns remaining. And what they do is they basically calculate that you get 20% of your unit when you recruit them in 3 kingdoms. So in this case, we get 7. 25%, I think is it's close to that. It's 20%-ish. It's a 30 unit, you know, so it's technically supposed to be 6, but 7. It rounds up a little bit. And the remaining 80% is divided by your mustering turns. So here we have an 8-turn default, so we get 10%, right? 80% left, 10%. And that's added to whatever replenishment you have, which is listed above. We have a basic replenishment rate for the faction. We have some bonuses for the faction. We have some character bonuses for the faction. That's from skill. Xiahou Dun has a skill for 5%. We get 5% here. And then because we have high military supplies, we get another 4%. If we have high population in this particular commandery, we get additional bonuses. If we have faction-wide effects, you know, all sorts of things. And then we add those percentage, which is 25, to the mustering rate, and we end up with 35%. And then we'll heal up basically in 3 turns. If we move, we lose our mustering rate. So if we move this turn, which we can't because we just conquered a land, but if you do move this turn, you actually drop to 25%. It's a huge loss, right? You're losing basically a turn, and you have to pay upkeep during this period. So you want to time things to maximize your mustering rate. We want to have this turn here. We probably don't move next turn. We are probably going to take advantage of our, you know, next mission, which we trigger here, to recruit a full army and get that full army up and running with the high replenishment rate, basically. That's the whole idea. We've been saving cash for this moment to flush out this force so that we can take Dong. So that's pretty much everything we need to do this turn. We got all the buildings queued up, and we can sort of end turn here. I think we can't really do much with the new factions. The value is too low, and Tolkien's because we're going to declare war on him, so we're not going to do any deals with him. Let's continue. Alright, we get our growing might. We picked up Xiahou Yuan, who's a unit, and then 2 more units on him, which ends up at 8. And they want us to hold 3 settlements. We are already holding 4, so we get a bonus credibility for 3 turns. Now, the decay obviously is going to slowly eat into us, but be careful. If it's going to overflow over 100, use it in diplomacy. There's no point to waste it. And we pick it up automatically because we already have it. And if we send any character on assignments, which guess what? We have done that already. We also get this one. So it's now plus 10 every turn for 3 turns. And we really have to watch. Actually, no. It's still plus 5. The turns add. So it's for 6 turns we get it. That way it's more gentle and then we actually don't go over. Our next mission is to hit the next rank, which requires 18 more points of prestige. And then we also get a challenge. Now, challenges are optional. In our case, we do want to sort of do these things because challenges are kind of designed based on historical events. And we do want to eventually destroy Tolkien. There's no time limit on this particular challenge. Some challenges do have time limits. So we want to watch out for that. And Death of Tolson. This is not historical. This happens in 192. The game is speeding this up. But we lose our father here, which we were ready for, and we sort of follow the story, and we are going to declare war. Now, what they say as the act of treachery is because if we had any deals with them, diplomatic deals, then we're going to break those deals to declare war, and that's going to be a treacherous act. We become unreliable or untrustworthy to other factions when we make diplomacy deal. We don't really want that. Either way, our dad's dead. And essentially, historically, what happens is that he was vacationing or retirement in Langya, which happened to sit near Tolkien's territory. Cao Cao has been expanding this area throughout 191, going to war with Tolkien during this period, basically border skirmishes. And Cao Cao feels that his dad's not safe in this area, so he asks his dad to leave, and he's escorted up toward Taishan by the local administrator Ying Shao. But along the way, there's many versions of this story. But I think the accurate one is that Tao Qian sent men over and killed Cao Song. It's debatable. It's an old story, 2,000 years plus, and we don't have concrete evidence. But the most believable version is that Tao Qian's responsible for killing Cao Song here, and then we basically declare war. So we crush them. Hi, neighbors. As you can see here, our army strength are not very close, so he can easily crush us here. But we're going to hold him off, beat him back with our skills, and then attack Dong afterwards. So that's kind of our plan. We have to beat him here in Pengcheng. We're not going to give up this territory. Typically we would. It wouldn't be a smart fight here. It'd be better if we give it up. But we are trying to get the achievement where we don't lose any battles. So we have to fight here. And we'll come back here next time, continue to build up our area, beat back Tao Qian here for the first time. We're not going to end our war with him. There's so many things we have to do. We had to push him into Donghai. So we're going to kick him out of Sapi, basically. And then we're also going to take this within the next 5 turns. So lots to do. Rank up for the assignment. Our heir is going to pick up more useful skills to help our faction out. It's spring, so we get to pick up a free reform to help our faction out. And hopefully we can survive this oncoming fight. And maybe pick up a strategist. There we go. We get a couple of strategists in our recruitment pool, even though both are not historically our strategists, which is a little bit tricky here. We're really going to wait for Guojia's event. That's going to be a long time, though. Technically, Cao Cao has a strategist at this time called Xi Zhiping, but Xi Zhicai, but he is not in the game, unfortunately. So we'll see what we can do. Anyhow, it's been a great start. So far, everything's going according to plan. Hopefully, Tao Qian won't mess that up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you all next time. Bye!